Hi, this is Dr. Feldman. I want to talk to you about something that I have just started studying, although I've been aware of it for quite some time. So we'll call this an introductory lesson to medical metrics. So what does that mean, medical metrics? Well, here I have a yardstick, and we all know what measurements mean: inches, feet, miles, pounds, meters, millimeters, centimeters, temperature. But measurement of medical metrics is something that really has come of age recently, and these things affect the chronic pain community. As a matter of fact, all Americans, if not all civilized people, more and more each day. So I have been reading a book which was written by I think an author. I think his name was Edwin Black, who was a very, very good writer. Hadn't read all of his books, but this is called IBM and the Holocaust. So IBM, International Business Machines, which was started in the early part of the 1900s with its headquarters, which I think is still in Endicott, New York, was pretty much a cultish organization run with an iron hand by a guy named Watson. And Watson, interestingly enough, traded, meaning had economic business activity with the Nazis before and during, and I'm sure after World War II. So, is that relevant today? Well, interesting thing that we have talked about, and many people are talking about in the chronic pain community, is what's known as the physician's prescription database. Now, when this tool first came out, I was leery about it, but many people were excited about it, as it gave a way, or potentially gave us a way to stop doctor shopping, meaning patients that feigned their illnesses in order to obtain opiates, and these are addiction patients. These are not real pain patients. So the physician's database, although I was leery of it, became a tool that we could use to become knowledgeable about certain things. But the purpose of the knowledge was to increase our awareness, but for the ultimate purpose of increasing our ability to treat patients appropriately and not participate in the addiction community. So we then allowed, I'm not sure we had any choice, but allowed law enforcement access to the database, although the database was supposed to be private, because you think, as people that go to the doctor, you think that your medical records are very secure and sacrosanct. So I'll have to tell you that they're not. So let me tell you what happened with IBM. So IBM developed a punch card system. Those of you that are old enough remember punch cards were early computers, and by being able to sort which punches were in the cards, you could sort certain variables. So IBM had a subsidiary in Germany which made the machines, the punch card sorting machines, and I saw one of these in the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. in a glass case. It was taken from a concentration camp, and I thought to myself, why was this in a concentration camp? So then I learned about this book. And so essentially, the Nazis hired IBM through their subsidiary. IBM wrote specific instructions to the card for the card readers to be able to take the census data and take that and use it to sort physical characteristics and whatever data they had on paper census records to be able to identify, then target, and then destroy the lives of 6 million Jews and many other non-Jewish people. So let's fast forward to today. This is a fascinating book. I'm only about a third through it, but it's difficult to read because it conjures up some pretty disturbing things. So let's say as you well know, that you go to your doctor and your doctor writes a prescription. Immediately, that prescription is transmitted. Most places, there are no more paper prescriptions or they're disappearing. And that's not the problem. The problem is they're transmitted to some central clearinghouse, and I believe that Brandeis University, which amazes me, is a Jewish institution, at least primarily, heavily supported by the Jewish community. Brandeis has wrestled control of this physician's database, and so or prescribing database. So what happens is other companies get a hold of this data, they buy it, and they churn it or morph it into something differently, and then the government contracts with these companies to look at which patients are taking what medications, in what doses, how far you live from the pharmacy, how far you live from the doctor, whether you're a male, you're a female, your age, your diagnosis, and they come up with scores. One of them is the NARC score. Well, the Nazis used this data to come into a community, and they would immediately know who the Jewish populace was. Well, that in itself is not a bad thing to know who how many Christians, how many Jews, how many Muslims, how many atheists. It doesn't really matter. It's what you do with the information. But now the information is used to target, to destroy, to indict, to hassle, to dissuade. And ultimately, what does this mean for the pain community? It means that these companies are taking your tax dollars, the tax dollars of the hardworking American public, and they are using it to destroy Americans. Hardworking, injured, sick, dedicated, voting Americans. So this is chapter 1 of this, and as I learn more, we'll talk more about it. One of the companies is named Appriss. And Andrew Kolodny is involved in this, either directly or peripherally. And all of this will be ferreted out soon. We already have a mound of information, but the more you study, the more you learn. And of course, why is this important to you? Because this has now become, we used to call this in Jewish parlance a pogrom. It's a show of force to show who's boss. And the bottom line is this, is that you as chronic pain patients have been relegated to second and third class citizens, and your destruction is being planned as we speak. And those of you that don't believe this, I suggest you get a copy of IBM and the Holocaust. To this day, IBM will not admit to this, and yet, why is there an IBM punch card machine sitting in the display case at the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.? It's really quite amazing. But IBM and the Holocaust is the name of the book. Look at it, and we'll talk more. Anyway, thanks.